As a teenager growing up in the early 2000s, I was around lots of people who were playing Guitar Hero. And to be completely honest, at the time, I thought Guitar Hero to be kind of stupid because after all, I could play real guitar. Why did I need to use a plastic controller and play fake guitar? But later on, I realized that Guitar Hero is just a fun party game that anyone can pick up and play, and it's just fun for a group. But before we had Guitar Hero and Rock Band, we had Quest for Fame. And by we, I mean somebody did. But it's an interesting little game, much like Guitar Hero in some ways. And it uses its own weird controller thing that plugs into a parallel port. So let's check it out. So this is Quest for Fame, developed by Virtual Music Entertainment and published by IBM for Windows 3.1 in 1995. While in name it may sound like a fantasy RPG, this is in fact a rhythm game heavily featuring Aerosmith, based around becoming a rock star with light adventure elements. Perhaps the most standout feature of the game at first glance is its gratuitous use of FMV as displayed on the back of the box. Speaking of the box, I managed to find this specimen still sealed in it. So let's crack it open and expose it to that sweet, sweet oxygen that it hasn't tasted in 29 years. Inside, you see some offers from long-dead ISPs, the usual unfun IBM documentation that reads as equally threatening as it does informative, the game on 2 crispy brand new CDs, and of course, the crown jewel of it all, the Vpick controller. The Vpick is a guitar pick-like object that plugs into a printer port and is a required accessory to play this game. Using a pack of real picks and a mini Bob Ross bobblehead for scale, you can see it's much larger than a real pick. So what do you do with it exactly? Well, this is explained in a series of videos. Normally I don't mention the install process when I review games, but here it's so riddled with FMV, I must mention it. When running the installer, you're introduced to a guy who explains to you how to set up your Vpick. I love this guy's enthusiasm, and he really reminds me of the dude you're getting a Dell guy.
Hey there! You're almost ready to start on the ultimate rock and roll adventure, but there's only one problem. You haven't installed your Vpick yet. I'll quickly show you how it's done. I strongly recommend that you power down your system before making the actual connection.
Interestingly, there are additional videos if you fail the Vpick installation, and even more videos can be found in the game files depending on how many times you fail. Thankfully, the Vpick installation and sound calibration was as smooth as butter for me, and the installation commenced with rocking. Literally. It really shouldn't be ignored that in 1995, this amount of motion video on your PC seemed like magic. In mid-90s computing, multimedia was the new hotness, and while it seems humdrum to see video or music on a computer now, in 1995, it was incredible. That said, basing your entire game around the FMV gimmick has led to some, let's say, less than stellar games in the past. Is that the case here though? Well, I intended to find out. So when you start the game, you're greeted with a short intro cinematic with lots of licensed music I can't play on YouTube. However, after that you're dropped into a menu with various options, including a how to play section with more videos from the tutorial dude as seen in the installer. These videos show you in more detail how to use the Vpick.
And you, my friend, are one very lucky rocker, because this amazing Vpick is going to let you rock all the way to the top. The Vpick was designed to feel and act just like a real guitar pick, but it's got magic all its own. Just strum up and down against any solid surface, keep in time with the music, and the virtual music software takes it from there.
Considering you can use anything as a guitar, I decided to craft my own. I chose a flying V shape to reflect my rebellious rock and roll attitude and need for all things that are pointy. I sourced only the finest tone woods and consulted a master luthier. After many hours of sanding, intonating, blood, sweat, and tears, I assembled this fine instrument and gave it a name worthy of its quality. Onto the Vpick itself, it's a plasticky purple object, and it seems to have a thing inside that rattles around and makes contact with some electronics. It has no sensitivity or nuance. It's a very binary device that can detect movement. I have some issues with this device, as you will see later on, but for now let's grab our guitar and get into the game itself. When you start a new game, you're given an option of 3 difficulty levels. I selected beginner, and I'm glad I didn't let my hubris let me pick harder modes, because as we will find out, this game is unapologetically difficult. So we start the game like any budding rock star in our cool 90s rocker bedroom. You receive a knock on the door from a stoner dude who I assume lives in your imagination or is your fairy godmother or something. I don't know, but he sets the stage for the kind of cheese we're in for. FMV cheese.
Kid, guitarists come to this town like mosquitoes to a bug light. So if you don't want to fry like the rest of them, you gotta practice. So come on, man, let's jam.
So I do as the man says and try to practice. So I start on my first song and... Not sure what happened there, but after restarting my computer, I got back into the game and clicked on the stereo and played through my first song for real. When you pick a song, you're given an opportunity to select the part of the song you want to play. You have basic, rhythm, lead, and stunt. In reality, these are not really parts of the song, but rather just difficulty modes that make you need to hit more notes. That said, I went with basic mode to start, and you know what? It was pretty manageable, hitting notes as they come across the screen, and about halfway through the song I was starting to get the hang of it and actually having a bit of fun. After the song was over, I started to explore the room a bit. Looking at this screen and many others in this game, you may assume this is a point-and-click adventure game. That is a bit deceiving though, as there really isn't that much to do. There is a world map you can use to travel to different locations in the game world, but unless you're prompted to go somewhere, it really just leads you to dead ends. So heading back to the room, I find that you can also click on the TV, which allows you to play some mini games. We have more lovely FMV here, with a game show host guy who summons Bill and Ted sound effects.
Welcome back to another episode of Nail That Riff!
From here you can play a Simon Says type game where you hear a riff and try and play it back using the Vpick. At this point I was still having fun and played through these little games. I also discovered a menu where you can adjust mixing levels for songs and shape your guitar tone. By shaping your guitar tone, I mean selecting the 3 presets they give you. This being a 1995 computer game, your guitar tone is played through MIDI on whatever sound device you have. I have a Sound Blaster 16, and it sounds pretty silly on an OPL 3, but it works. So at this point, I went back to the room and decided to practice more songs and see if anything happens. Something did indeed happen, as a matter of fact, as my in-game mom entered the room and commented on my music.
Oh, that sounds bitchin'!
Anyway, after practicing some tunes, I get notified by my bandmates, who apparently exist, and they tell me that I need to meet them at the garage for practice. These people have no names, like most people in this game, and come to think of it, the tutorial guy is probably the most established character that exists in this game. So I'm coming up with my own lore here, just for your reference. So we have Lars Ball Itch on drums, Grungy McGrungeface on guitar, Divorced Dad on bass, and Lisa Hot Pants on vocals. Lisa here plays a very pivotal role near the end of the game, as we'll find out later. If you can't tell, I'm being sarcastic. So at band practice here, we get to choose a song and play with the band. After successfully performing 3 songs, we're approached by a generic record deal swindler type.
I know it's short notice, terribly sorry. This place is legendary. It's the Roadkill Grill, huh? What do you think? Okay, so you learn a couple extra tunes, skyrocket you right to the top. You're beautiful.
So we land our first gig, and this is where the game starts to decline for me. So first, when we get to the show, we are heckled by this guy, who I guess is supposed to be our arch rival. I'm gonna call him Gary, I guess. So just like the garage, I get to pick an Aerosmith song and we start rocking. However, this time I'm interrupted in the middle of the song by some cartoonish goons who threaten me with violence unless I play Steppenwolf.
Play Steppenwolf.
What's going on?
Dude is large, man.
I think he wants us to play something.
I think this dude is serious, man. You better just play it by ear.
So the problem with this is I've not heard the song Born to Be Wild since I listened to classic rock radio with my dad 15 years ago. Now you may be thinking, well, that's just fine. Just follow the notes on the screen. You don't need to know the song if it shows the notes on the screen, right? Well, about that. Since we're playing by ear, the game doesn't prompt you for the notes. So if you don't know the song at all, you lose and are sent back in time and need to practice the song in your bedroom and endure all the previous cutscenes and perform all the songs again. The game does show you how well you're performing the song with the icon on the left, and it does give you extra chances if you miss too many notes. However, many of these extra chances come in the form of restarting the entire song. To me, restarting the entire song from the beginning every time you fail or miss too many notes is just plain unfun. While it's true, games like Guitar Hero do this as well, it's much more frustrating here due to the fact that most of the time, it's the inconsistency of the Vpick that makes you lose. Yeah, the Vpick works okay for basic levels, but it's definitely not responsive enough for the more difficult sections you're expected to play later in the game here. I understand the idea is you're supposed to use it like you would play an air guitar on something like a tennis racket. However, I found myself playing it more like the spoons to get it to recognize these rapid notes. It just doesn't recognize anything more than downstrokes most of the time. And yes, before you ask, I did try it on a real guitar and it really doesn't work at all. I digress though. I was able to get past this point in the game. I did find that you can save the game at any point, so that made completing it far more palatable. But anyway, after the gig, since my guitar skills were so impressive, I was approached by a member of Aerosmith whose name I don't know, and was invited to a blues club to play some music. Anyway, same kind of thing here, saving, failing, and repeating the same songs over until I get it. At first, it did the thing where it wanted me to play by ear, but eventually, after enough failures, it let me see the actual notes, and I was able to use the spoon technique to achieve victory. My reward was being invited by the Smith of Arrow himself to lay down some dubs in the studio.
Good stuff. Listen, we're laying down some new tunes at the studio. You ought to stop by and maybe put down some overdubs.
So when you arrive at the studio, you need to play guitar riffs to enter a locked door. Seems like a terrible security practice, but I guess most people don't carry around a guitar and amp everywhere like this guy does. So when you get in the actual studio, you lay down some tracks for the band. This part was kind of fun, and if you were an Aerosmith fan, it might provide you with some joy to see Steven Tyler and the band themselves do stuff. After I did such a great job recording these songs, I was invited to play a show with Aerosmith as a special guest. So they gave me some of the set list and gave me some time to practice the songs. At this point, I really thought I was just going to be able to travel to the stadium and perform. However, my bandmates reminded me that I had a show booked with them tonight, and they were real jerks about it too.
All right, Mr. Big Time.
Yeah, Mr. Friend of Aerosmith.
So sorry to interrupt, but we got a gig in case you forgot.
Yeah.
And we ain't blowing it on your account.
That's right.
So let's go.
So apparently I can't just say, screw you guys, I'm playing with Aerosmith? I guess not. So the gig the band booked here is in an old folks polka club or something, and the only way I will make it to the Aerosmith concert in time is to rock so hard that I vaporize all the old people. No, I'm not kidding. So the goal here is simple. I need to perform the song Eat the Rich at lead level, and when it shows people dancing, I need to hit every note almost perfectly to murder them or something. If I fail at any point, I restart the entire song from the beginning. I'm not going to lie, I almost completely gave up at this point. I don't think I need to tell you how frustrating it is to make it about 75% through a 4-minute song, only to be interrupted by Miss Hot Pants and need to restart the entire thing.
What the heck are we doing here?
But after a few breaks for my mental state, much save scumming, and talking with my doctor about treatment options for carpal tunnel syndrome, I was finally able to beat it. And look, there's the tour bus stopping to pick me up. Surely now I would be able to play with Aerosmith, right? Well, it's never that easy, is it? So for some reason, Lisa decides to tag along, and before we can get on the Aerosmith tour bus to ride to the show, we have to convince a cartoon version of Tommy Chong that we can indeed play the guitar. This one was refreshingly easy, and I managed to get it in my first try. So now we're approaching the stadium where freaking Aerosmith will finally play. And we're at the backstage entrance. Surely now nothing will stop us from playing our Oh man.
Whoa! I've been waiting on you, Mr. Big Time, Mr. Bluesman, Mr. Friend of Aerosmith. I've about had enough. Now, if anyone's getting on that stage tonight, it's gonna be me. Woo!
So I guess we're supposed to remember this guy from the bar before. Ugh. Well, this is Gary, remember, our arch rival, and he really sucks. He's blocking our way, and we need to beat him Devil Went Down to Georgia style with a good old-fashioned guitar battle before we can play the show. Again, the Vpick was really betraying me here. Near the end of the turn-based duel, there's a faster guitar lick that is nearly impossible to play consistently with this stupid thing, even when I go Super Saiyan spoon style on it. The dumbest part of the entire thing, to me at least, is the actual guitar lick he's playing is way easier to play on a real guitar than it is on this stupid pick thing. Close enough. Time to play for Aerosmith. After nearly 30 minutes of screwing around, I was finally able to defeat Gary and become an Aerosmith master. So the obvious reward to beating Gary was to actually play the concert with Aerosmith. And you know what? This last concert scene was actually kind of fun. You play 3 songs with Aerosmith and it doesn't completely suck. So after the show, we get one final cutscene to leave the game off with.
Look, it's the bus. Let's go for a ride.
This can't be going where we think it is, can it? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's going there. Alright, so that is Quest for Fame. What are my final thoughts? Well, I know the latter half of this review has sounded a bit harsh. There are some things I like about it though. I quite enjoy the FMV and cartoon-like Who Framed Roger Rabbit inspired world. I also have to admit that there definitely was some love put into the way this game was made. For instance, all the musicians performing on the instruments in-game sync to the backing tracks perfectly, which is something almost no video game, movie, or TV show usually ever get right. However, this is not something I recommend anyone seek out. Although it does lend to a unique experience, the Vpick itself is a frustrating piece of oddware. The game is also designed in such a way that makes every moment feel stressful, and failure always ends with a ton of backtracking and frustrating repetitive tasks. For a music game, there's also a very limited amount of music, and you will be playing mostly the same 5 or 6 songs the entire game, making it feel like even more of a slog. I respect the game for what it is and the cool tech it had for the time, but I'm probably not going to play it ever again. Those are my thoughts though. I'd be curious to know if anyone else remembers playing this or liking it, so tell me your experience below. Well, this was a long video, and if you got this far in, why not subscribe? I have more videos on games, sound cards, and vintage hardware in the backlog and coming in the future, so stay tuned. Also, big shout out to my members and patrons on the screen now. You guys are the best. I might even say, you rock.